Hello, I'm Lisa Bien, and welcome to Bouncing Back. You might not know it from watching me, well maybe you do, but I'm not always as comfortable as I could be in talking in front of a camera. It takes time, effort, and practice to learn how to speak well on camera. But if you meet me in real life, you will quickly find that I don't have much difficulty expressing myself verbally. But some people need to work hard to make their words come across clearly in everyday life. Many people suffer from speech impediments, from lisps and stutters that can make it more difficult to communicate with others in daily life. This can create challenges from delivering presentations in class to simply ordering coffee in the morning line. Today we're going to meet with someone who has struggled and overcome a speech disorder to rise to the top of her profession in the field of communications, and who can tell us how she's got there. Let's get started. Hello, I'm Lisa Bien, and welcome to Bouncing Back.
God makes a way.
Be honest and communicate.
Your authentic self.
That's so critical. Sharla Feldscher is a true Renaissance woman. She has written books about kids, written columns for the Daily News, the Jewish Exponent, and she had a regular feature on KYW News Radio. She also runs her own public relations firms with clients that read like a who's who of Philadelphia, including the Franklin Institute, the Philadelphia Inquirer, the Daily News, the Free Library of Philadelphia, the Phillies, Ride the Ducks, and so much more. She also uses her skills for nonprofits, serving on the board of the Police Athletic League. This is only scratching the surface. You should see her website. Based on all that, you would think that Sharla Feldscher is one of those people who seems to be able to do anything, but it wasn't always that way. In fact, as a young girl, she had an ongoing fear of stuttering. While she didn't actually stutter, she stammered, enough so that it held her back at times. She'd be afraid to read in class because, well, what if someone found out? It was in a Temple public speaking course, where she was forced to face this fear. And it became one of the most important lessons of her life. Since then, she's been on television hundreds of times, given speeches and guest lectured, even in my class at Temple, and no one would have ever known this dread that she felt as a child. Thank you so much for joining us today. I am so excited to have you. This is amazing that here we are sitting here together having this conversation. Amazing. So for those of you who don't know, I know Sharla now, how many years?
Almost 30.
Almost 30 years. I've worked with Sharla, and you're my mentor and great friend. And when you told me that story about how Temple changed your life, I was shocked. But for the people who don't know you for 30 years, let's start with a little bit of background and history. So today's your first day back at Temple in a few years, maybe?
Yeah, I guess lecture too on occasion. So
campus
great
looks
to be
amazing,
here.
A little different, huh?
Amazing. I couldn't believe that was at Barton Hall is not there. Where
It's
I took
gone.
Science and
I love this school. It's the best, isn't it? We could just do an ad. Forget the show. We're just going to do an ad for Temple. But anyway, so where are you today? Your company, I believe, recently moved from Philadelphia to South Jersey,
right.
correct?
I have a public relations business, and I'm starting my 32nd year in January. And but having a business, it's all been a surprise, my career. At Temple, I studied early childhood education, and I was a kindergarten teacher in Philadelphia at the Henry Lawton Elementary School, and I loved it. The one thing I always knew is that I love kids.
I always forget about it. So it's interesting you say that, because that's one thing I always forget about you, is that here you are, this iconic PR person, and you didn't even study it, right? So
No, I learned it on the job as a volunteer. And I always tell people to volunteer in something that they really care about. Look at that. I volunteered at Please Touch Museum. They put me in the all-volunteer public relations department. I learned how to write a press release from somebody who was in school studying it. I didn't know how to do it. And I became the first PR director of Please Touch Museum.
I think that's amazing.
Sorry.
That's okay. No. I think that's amazing because you and I both do informational interviews all the time with college students, and we often do lectures, and many times students are so concerned about, what am I going to do with this degree that I got? Oh my God, I want to get a job. And so it's almost like what your business has become is part of your journey, so to speak, right?
Right. Well, you know, I have this picture on my desk. It says, success is a journey, not a destination. And this journey, really, if you think of me as a child and what I was like, I lost my mom when I was 27, so she didn't really get to see all the great things that have come in my life, my books and this career. But it is really amazing.
So I always tell students, you know, don't panic, just embrace the journey. And I did definitely, I will admit I stole that line from her. She taught me to enjoy the journey. So I guess, you know, now you're this big iconic PR person. Everybody knows your name, Sharla Feldscher. We hear it all the time. People just go, oh yeah, we know Sharla. Everyone loves Sharla. So you've created this business, but take us back to, it's not that long ago.
Yeah, it's a long time ago.
Take us back to when you realized that you had a fear of.
Oh, my mother told me when I was 2 I would sing because I was afraid. A lot of people who stutter sing. And I was afraid that my words wouldn't come out when I was a little baby. And so apparently I sang what I wanted to say. I don't know, I have no memory of that. But I do know that I was afraid that my words would not come out clearly. You said something when we were together earlier that I thought, yeah, that's it. Like, people stumble on words.
All the time,
right?
Constantly.
No
I'm always
deal.
afraid that I'm going to use the wrong word in my grammar. You know, I mean, it happens. Well versus good. Does everyone really know that rule?
I know that.
I know you do.
That.
I know it most of the time. Every now and again, I slip, and inevitably, it's like a light goes on, and people go, "Oh, you used the wrong word."
But for me, it was much more than just stumbling on a word.
Right.
For me, it was that internal fear that what if I stutter? So I'd kind of get stuck on a word. It wasn't using the wrong word. It was getting it out. And it held me back a lot. And I want to compliment you, Lisa, because I've never said this publicly before. So for me, telling you about this is, and your audience, is a real example of bouncing back.
Well, now you just made my whole, like, now I don't know what to say. But,
no. Well,
but I'm lost for words for a second. But
second.
Well, thank you for that compliment, because the goal of the show is really to share with people that we all overcome things throughout our life. And I think that when you first told me on the phone, maybe it was over the phone you told me, or you text messaged me, we were having a conversation.
Text message, that's pretty funny.
Well, you text messaged me that you wanted to share your story on the show, and I was in awe of that, like, wow, that this show is really making a difference in people's lives. And the fact that I didn't really know that, I did not know that about you at all.
And that's part of it, because when people have a fear, they do a big cover-up often. You don't really know that someone is scared to death inside, but they are. And I used to tell people about the song, whenever I feel afraid from getting to know you, I hold my head erect and whistle a happy tune, and no one will suspect you're afraid or I'm afraid. I can't whistle. I don't know how great I am at singing. But cover it up. You know, I would pretend that I'm fine, I can do this. Except when I was in elementary school and the kids would have to read and the teacher would go around, I would raise my hand and say, could I be excused? So when it came to my turn to read, I didn't have to because I was so afraid. And also, I'm Jewish, and at Passover, people would read from a book, and I would be so afraid. And it's so great that I'm not there anymore. Somehow it went away. I actually know how it went away, and I do thank Temple University for that.
Do you want to share how it went away?
Sure.
Or do you want to talk a little bit more first about, maybe we should talk a little bit more first about people. And I'm constantly telling people, especially my own children, that when we meet people, don't take that person for face value. In other words, that's their mask that they're wearing on the outside, that everybody has something. Every single one of us are fighting a battle. And anybody who knows my story knows that I struggled with low self-esteem most of my young adult life. Well, now that's over with. No. But you raise an interesting question. You raise a few things. Number one is that look what you did. You used to ask to get excused so that you didn't have to get your turn. I remember being in math class. Math was always a deficit of mine, and the teacher would make us stand up and do the multiplication table. And I would remember thinking, okay, so if it was the fives table, she's going to get to me. Oh my God, when it's me, it's going to be 5 times. Am I going to know that answer? Just because math was so scary to me. So I think that that's the message here is really, we don't really know what's going on in someone's world, internal self. What we see on the outside is not at all really what's going on internally.
And you know what I figured out? What if you stood up and you did 5 times 5 is 20 instead of 25? So what? You would have made a mistake. Big deal. Who really cares? You would have corrected it. She would have corrected it. But that was my fear. When I was younger, really young, it's like, what if somebody found out that I did have this speech problem? I'm not even sure what to call it. But really, I had this fear. And the fear became bigger than the reality. Because so what if you made a mistake or I fumbled a word?
Well, I teach public speaking here at Temple many semesters, and it's interesting because people are always say, oh my God, I'm so scared. I hate public speaking. And I'm like, well, what do you hate about public speaking? Because half the time, and this is true, I think people aren't really listening anyway.
Exactly.
Right? I mean, it takes how long? I think the last statistic I heard is that people change thoughts like every 7 seconds or something. So you really have to engage, capture that audience, and that's if you can master that art, that's great. But let's talk about public speaking class. Here I have students that go up and I say, "You ready for this? Are you ready?" And they're like, "No, I'm really scared." But I think you raised an interesting point too, is that fear is what we create in our mind. We make it worse than it really is.
We make it so much worse than it is. But so my story is, I mentioned earlier, I always loved kids. That's all I knew. I wanted to teach kindergarten. See, they're 5. And if I would stammer, maybe even stutter in front of a 5-year-old, they're not going to laugh at me. So that could have been my safe place. But it turned out to be a place when I taught where all my creativity came out. I really did a great, great job. I wrote about all my experiences as a teacher. But I forgot where I was going. But the beginning of that, it all is because of kids that I overcame my fear. So as a Temple student, I was assigned one summer to work at the Carver School, which is right here on campus. It had been an elementary school. It's not that anymore, I don't think. And I worked at the very first Operation Head Start. And I was with these kids, and I had incredible experiences. Some great, some not so great. But even those negative experiences taught me so much more about what I had to learn as a teacher. But then, public speaking, you teach it. I didn't even realize that you teach public speaking. Everybody has to take it.
It's actually one of my favorite courses to teach.
Really?
Because of all the courses I've taught here at Temple, you can see the improvement at the end of the day. So they start out and they can barely. I start out with do an intro of your name, where you're from, tell me something a little exciting about yourself, and it's like, do I have to? And then by I think it's 6 speeches, you get to see, it's like a flower that just blooms.
Isn't that
They
great?
start out as a seed, and then by the end of the semester, they're raring to go and motivated.
Well, that's a compliment to you.
And that's what I like to do. I like to see
That's really
it.
great.
Thank you.
So for me, public speaking was something I never wanted to take. Can you imagine? How that felt with someone with my fear. So here comes the class. I probably waited till my senior year or the latest I could take it. But I wrote, my speech was about kids, about that summer experience. And I also said, can I go first? Because the thought of sitting there and waiting my turn, that was just dreadful. I went first. I talked about my summer experience in Operation Head Start. I was so into talking about the kids. When I was done, I realized, oh my God, I had fun. Oh my God, I forgot to worry. I was into my subject and not into me, and that was the biggest lesson that I learned. So now, you can put me in a room with 1,000 people.
Or you can put you on a TV show.
Yes, many years. I had my own feature on television for a long time. And I was talking about my subject, which is kids. Now it doesn't really matter what I talk about.
Well,
But
kids is still your subject, right?
yes, it is.
So that makes sense to me, and I don't think I knew that either, why kids are so near and dear to your heart, right? You've written how many children's books?
Well, I've written 6 books on parenting. I'm having another book, and on teaching. I wrote for teachers as well, because this creative person that was born when I became a teacher, that's when I found out I was creative, not as a student, because I think I had too many fears to let that creativity out.
Can we say that again for all the students that are watching our show right now? Because I really think that it's interesting, and it's really important for the students to remember that I say it all the time. College is a very intimidating time of someone's life, and that college is we're almost immersed in a little bit of insecurity and low self-esteem, and really
Not just college. I mean, for me, it was all my education years that I felt that fear because of my speech. So, yeah, but then, wait, where were we going?
I wanted to hit home a little bit on the point that you brought up about that your creativity really came out for you, and
As a teacher.
And
Yeah.
it seems like
I think it felt like a safe environment. And oh my God, I've been that creative spark. You know, it's the logo of my business, a spark. You can mention anything to me and I'll come up with a creative idea. And making those ideas happen, which is what we do in public relations, is so personally rewarding. And if I think about me as a young person, I didn't really know that experience. So for your students watching, the world's going to open up for you after college.
but while you're in college, it's still not open.
Excuse me.
Well, so much I want to talk about. One of the things you and I have talked about is that person never goes away, right? So, because driving here today, even you brought it up and you're like, this is such a big deal for me. And I look at you and I think, wow, you've been my mentor, you've been my friend, you've been this, and here you are. And how does it feel?
I think it feels pretty good. I actually told some people about doing this in advance because this is a big deal for me to talk about it publicly. And I think it makes me pat my shoulder a little, like, yeah, you did it. You've come a long way, baby.
Well, you certainly
Which is
have.
what I always say about you.
You always say that about me, but I think what's interesting though is that what I guess I'm trying to get to is that person's always there.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like
I was surprised that I had all this fear about this conversation because I've never really had it this way before, especially publicly. And I said, you know, that little girl's still here. I may have had all these accomplishments, and maybe that's why I'm so driven. But that little girl, even at my age, is still here.
So let's go back a little bit to that little girl because we kind of like went really quickly over that.
Okay.
So here you are in elementary school. Did you share any of this with your parents? Like, did you say?
Oh yeah, my parents. Well, I went to therapy and
Oh,
different
you
kinds
did.
of,
Okay.
which made me feel like there was really something wrong with me.
It's another interesting point. So here we have therapy, which is designed to help people, and we have for a whole nother tangent, but we have medications that are also out there to help people with anxiety, et cetera, et cetera. But people take it, especially at a young age, and they go to a therapy and they think, oh, I'm different, and nobody likes to.
Well, part of the problem was my mother thought I was different, not my daddy. My daddy, I was it to him. But my mother was really worried about me. So her worries, I internalized. And then the fact that I had to go for therapy, I internalized that she didn't like that. She actually said, don't tell anybody. Now today,
Wow. And
yeah.
today they posted on Facebook and.
Well, to me, anybody who is in therapy has a gift, and everybody should have it. And
I say it all the time. If it wasn't for my therapist, I would not be sitting here today in this chair, because I wrote 2 books, and in my first book, one of my major credits goes to my therapist, and I am proud to say that I went to therapy, and every now and again I go for what's called like a checkup. You know how you go to the doctor and you get your blood work taken? I go for a checkup. It's sit down and talk to somebody that's so objective to your life and just not coming from it from a different angle, just there to hear you talk.
And sometimes, like, I haven't gone in a long time, but when I've had things that have come up for me, not related to this, just other things come up for me, I've gone, And I remember I called my doctor maybe 3 years after I went, and he said, "Oh, what's the matter?" I said, "Nothing. I just wanted to say hi and thank you."
That's amazing. Do you have, you have such a passion for music. That's something else I wanted to touch on, because you said how you used to sing, right? Was that your, so
Oh,
I created mantras. I always say when someone's going through a hard time, create a mantra. Remind yourself that you're amazing or special or I can do this, whatever it is
Right.
that you need. I got this. I got this. Stupid little things for me are like going on roller coasters. I forgot our experience with roller coasters, but going on a roller coaster, my son challenged me one day to go on a roller coaster, and it was a big roller coaster, a great adventure. And I said, "I'm scared." And he said, well, how do you know you're scared? You have never been on this ride before. It's your brain telling you that you're scared. And I went on it.
and
I survived. I'm here to talk about it, but I screamed the entire time.
and when you got off, did you say, "I'll never do it again"?
I did, but I went on a few more rides and whatever. So but the point is that I always try to advise people to create mantras. Talk to yourself. It's a lot.
Yeah.
So much self-talk is involved in becoming who we are. People, and that's one of the things I love to talk about too, is that there's a need for self-talk. So, but singing was like your self-talk, right?
It's so interesting because I don't think about that. I don't talk about this much. And yes, I love music. It's such an important part of my career. If
But
I
you also sing now in a choir, right?
for many years.
And you love your music clients, right?
So, and I'm thrilled that I manage a band and I manage a singer, and I've managed other singers, and it's being part of that music world. And I've been involved with the Philly Pops for so many years.
So music has really become a little bit of your self-talk, right?
Well,
Maybe.
I never thought of that.
Maybe, you know what I mean? Maybe because that singing was so important to you. Do you have a piece of advice to anybody who's watching our show right now, to sitting in home and they're fearful of doing something? What advice would you give to that person?
I always think about the reason why I did so well at that speech is that I talked about something I was passionate about. And I will tell people in informational interviews, what do you love? What is really fun for you? And if you get involved in that, you're going to think about that. If you love art and you volunteer at a museum and you're around art, you might have certain fears about walking through small spaces, but if that art exhibit is in a small space, you're going to go look at that art, and you're going to not think about that small space, hopefully. So how can you distract yourself from the fear in a really fun way?
Oh my God, that is, I need to think about that for a second, because it's true. It's almost like that saying. What's that saying? When you do something you love so much, it's not even like it's work.
Right. I say I spell work F-U-N. I am really blessed that it is so much fun. But when you're in PR and communications, you can communicate about anything. So I have a great excuse to be involved in music because I'm a publicist and a manager. So I can use something I'm passionate about in my work. How great is that?
That's amazing. Speaking about your work, or maybe it's not your work, is there one event in your life something that you've done that you're just like, wow, I did that?
I have a lot. Isn't that terrible? I have so many.
Well, I'll give you 2 minutes for 2 of them. How's that?
2 minutes each or 1 minute each? For Please Touch Museum in 1983, when it moved to the location on 21st Street before its present location, I created something really huge called Philadelphia Celebrates Children with Please Touch Museum. 100 organizations in the entire region, from the Phillies to the Girl Scouts to department stores to museums, performing groups, they all planned things for kids and families in 1 month, October 1983, to celebrate our museum. And we had 22 events at the museum. I think the staff was going to kill me because we had lines around the block. But as a PR person, we got press everywhere, cover story of Weekend and everywhere. And you want to hear something so funny? It was my 20th high school reunion. And there was an article about me about Philadelphia Celebrates Children in the Philadelphia Inquirer. It came out the day before my reunion. I couldn't have planned it better, right?
Don't you love when that happens? You get all this publicity.
So that
right
was
before you're
such a
going
long
out.
time ago, and then because of that event and my work with kids, Sesame Place asked me to work with them. And I had wanted to write for the television show Sesame Street, but I got rejected. But then I got to hang out with Big Bird and Elmo and Cookie Monster, and for 26 years, you know, you were part of that. I represented this theme park that I am such a fan of and did all kinds of great things for the park.
So we're sitting here and I'm thinking, I just keep looking at you and thinking, wow, you're so accomplished and I'm so very blessed. I don't want to get through this without crying because I'm so very blessed to have you in my life for as long as I've had you in my life, and you've really guided my career, and we're all really lucky. Anybody who knows Sharla, I always say you have the brightest smile in the world, and you're just like a big ray of sunshine. When you walk in the room, there's my Sharla, and that's truly who you are, and the things that you've done for the city is amazing. Coming back to Temple, I know the students love you because every semester I say, I'm going to have Sharla guest speaker, and they're like, we had her last semester.
Great. She's back.
But I want to thank you again for coming on the show and sharing your story with us, because who knew, you know? And that's my point of the show, is if we could all be that honest every day. And I'm not, you know, I say sometimes, which I would love to happen here at Temple, maybe one day this will happen, is that, you know, when runners pin their number on them, I want us to have one day in this world where we're walking around and it says, I'm afraid of, or I lost my job, or I got in a fight with my girlfriend, and then we'd be kinder to each other and we would be nicer to each other. And that is part of my show. Mission is to help people see that we must and we will and we do overcome adversity. And sometimes it's with help of a parent, a friend, a professor. In other words, is you can do it.
Well, you know what? I would never have dreamed that I could be on television. I would never have dreamed that I could have given a speech anywhere, ever. Can you imagine with the fears I had as a child? And look at me now. So I want to say that I hope people will always think, you know what, there's a chance for me. I might not be ready today, but it is a journey. You're on a journey, and you learn so much. The negative things in your life teach you so much. The negative people in your life teach you what you don't want to be. And can I add about you, Lisa?
I don't know.
Because I have to just say this. We used to work together for years, and Lisa would always have students come in, and they would leave for informational interviews, and you would say, God, I'd love to work with students. I'd love to mentor students. Look at you. So I'm equally proud of you.
Oh, thank you. I love my students almost as much as I love my owls, but I love Temple. No, I just think that we all need a reminder that, you know, life is tough, and when we get knocked down, we have to say, hey, what am I supposed to learn? Because adversity is truly our greatest teacher.
Yeah.
I'm going to end it with that.
Whoa.
Thank you. There are countless stories of people overcoming speech problems, like stuttering, to become better public speakers. Some people that you might not even expect include actresses Emily Blunt, actor James Earl Jones, and even Vice President Joe Biden. All three of these people are famous for their ability to speak and use their voices in their career every single day. What's true in each case is that each person has become better speaker than most, and they understand and respect the ability to speak more than most. They've learned not to take the power of speech for granted, and that has given them an understanding and respect for the spoken word that we should all learn from. Once again, I'm Lisa Bien, and I hope to see you next time on Bouncing Back.